because we felt it was important to be there on this occasion. But then, unfortunately, due to the COVID, we decided to move it to Brussels, and then in the end, we had to completely organize this event online. But overall, despite this very difficult and tragic moment for many people, I think universities and especially university networks are reacting to the challenges, and we moved many activities online. And we saw, like we discussed this morning for the colleagues who were present also in the administrative part, we presented the UNICA activities showing that actually we reacted quite well, and we organized interesting events in this very difficult year. So the program today is very interesting. We have 3 main sessions. One is related to the UNICA in Europe, 2 success stories. Then we will have a second session on challenges and opportunities for universities in the COVID-19 era. And then a third session on the future relevance of higher education for society. I would like to thank very much all the speakers who accepted to speak at this important event, all the chairs, all of you that are participating now. I want to thank very much the UNICA Secretariat, who worked very well for this event, and I think the program is really very interesting. So without further ado, I would like to ask the Secretariat to launch the audio message by the EU Commissioner for Innovation, Research and Culture and Education and Youth, Maria Gabriel.
I will share.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'm glad to have the opportunity to congratulate you on the occasion of the 30th University of UNICA. Thanks to networks of universities like yours.
Sorry that the quality is not very good, unfortunately. The Secretariat is probably trying to solve. Sorry for these technical problems. I think Laura, we should try again to launch the audio. Sorry, we will try again. This is the.
Sorry, Luciano, because I couldn't hear you while the video. So the quality is not good of the audio.
No, it's not very good. And then at a certain moment it stopped. So.
Okay. So maybe it's a good idea. I'm sorry for that, but the quality of the video we received was not very high actually. So transmitting this on Zoom is even worse. So we published it on the YouTube UNICA YouTube channel, and maybe it's good that we send the link and participants can then hear
Sorry for these difficulties. It's a good message, prepared on purpose for our network. So I really encourage you to listen to it. It's really, I would say, quite inspiring on some points. And sorry for these technical issues. So we proceed with the program. Now I would like to give the floor to Tanja Börzel. She's a Jean Monnet Chair, Director of the Center for European Integration and the Center of Excellence, the EU and its citizens of Freie Universität Berlin, and she will chair the first session on UNICA and Europe, 2 success stories.
Thank you very much, Luciano. It is a great pleasure to be the moderator of this session. I feel very privileged because I received my PhD at the European University Institute in Florence and started my university career at Humboldt Universität zu Berlin with the German equivalent of an ERC starting grant in 2000. Since 2004, I'm professor of political science at Freie Universität and also the director of a cluster of excellence contestations of the liberal script. So, my first act as chair is to introduce the three panelists. I think none of them really needs much introduction. Professor Saso is the president of UNICA, so you should know him. He's a pharmacologist and vice rector for European University Networks at Sapienza University of Rome. Professor Kunst was just re-elected as president of Humboldt Universität zu Berlin. Congratulations. Before she became president of Humboldt Universität, she was Minister of Science, Research and Culture of the state of Brandenburg. Professor Ziegler is professor of mathematics at Freie Universität Berlin, and he is the president of Freie Universität since 2018. I apologize for being so brief, but I think all three panelists are very well known to you, and I would rather use the time we have for discussion. We will start the session with a joint presentation of Professor Kunst and Professor Ziegler on Humboldt and Freie, two capital universities as a driving force for Berlin as a European science hub. And then Professor Saso will reflect on the history of UNICA and its entanglement with the history of Europe, highlighting some milestones and developments over the past 30 years. The two presentations together should not last longer than 20 minutes to ensure that we have sufficient time for discussion. However, the idea is not to have a classical Q&A session, but rather to have you comment on the insights presented by the three panelists. I will seek to stimulate the discussion by reflecting on what I see as a major challenge Europe is currently facing and which will not be addressed in one of the subsequent sessions today, namely the freedom of scientific research. Okay, now I'm looking very much forward to this session. It is my pleasure to give the floor to Professor Kunst and Professor Ziegler. You already see, and you have about 10 to 12 minutes, please. I'm not sure, but I can't hear anything.
I did not switch on my mic. That might. Now you can hear? Okay. Welcome again. Thanks, Tanja. You shouldn't need an introduction either, of course. I wanted to welcome you at least virtually in Berlin on this occasion and of course tell a Berlin story. And if we talk about, Sabine and I talk about the Humboldt Universität and Freie Universität, they both have a very rich history, which is connected to the history of Berlin and the city of Berlin and the history of Germany. It's also a history, of course, of post-war separation of Germany into East and West and how Germany developed and Berlin developed. So we will start out with giving perspective on the history and foundations of the universities, which developed, of course, very differently in the time of separation. Freie Universität, you could give the next slide, was founded in 1948, directly after the war, by students, scholars, and scientists with support, huge support by American Allied forces and politicians in the western part of Berlin, by people also who came from the eastern part and as a response of the political and ideological pressures there, also on the Berlin University in the east. Due to its isolated position in West Berlin, Freie Universität had to collaborate with academic institutions and academic figures, not only in Germany, but elsewhere in Europe and all over the world. And that may have been a necessity at that time, but it became an integral element of what Freie Universität's identity is today, which defines itself as international network university. That was the title we had in the excellence competition, and it's still the understanding of Freie Universität. With that, I hand over to Sabine.
Yes, thanks. Warmly welcome to everyone. Humboldt University was founded in 1810, aiming for the integration of the natural, social sciences and humanities and establishing the unity of research and teaching. Building on this success model in the early 1900s, Berlin's university became the largest and most renowned university in Germany. During the National Socialism, many among its staff and students were enthusiastic supporters of the regime, and there are only few examples of resistance. This made a new beginning after the physical and moral ashes all the more difficult in 1945. Yet as early as 1946, lectures were held again, yet under the watchful eyes of the Soviet occupying power. Nevertheless, it was still possible in some areas to restore international contacts and create worldwide cooperation. It was not until Germany's reunification in the 1990s that the university could break new ground on the one hand and tie into older traditions on the other. The fall of the Berlin Wall brought huge upheavals to the entire science ecosystem of the city. When the Berlin Wall fell in 1889, Berlin suddenly had three major universities which caused fundamental challenges. Freie and Technische Universität in the West had to redefine their roles with a new partner in town, while Humboldt faced the major challenge of transforming into a modern Western research university. As a result, all three universities were focused on redefining their identities and on mutual differentiation. Let us focus on Freie Universität and Humboldt Universität. Both underwent serious restructuring efforts. Humboldt University's entire staff was subjected to a personal and professional review. These structural aspects, as well as a new financial restriction, resulted in a serious reduction in staff. But in this process, Humboldt University was able to attract outstanding scientists and scholars from East and West Germany and worldwide. With the help of expert groups, Humboldt University gave itself a new scientific structure. Research and teaching contents were evaluated, modified, and redefined. And out of necessity and opportunity, Humboldt Universität got a whole new science campus to relocate the mathematics and scientific departments out of cramped conditions in the central Berlin part of Mitte. A new campus in Berlin, Adlershof, was constructed. A whole new urban district was created. So may I hand over to you, Günter?
Sure, with pleasure. Then I would go back to Freie Universität, for whom this changes had severe financial consequences. There was restructuring in the 1990s with an education structural plan, which in the end meant spending cuts of something like 1 billion German marks at the time. For Technische Universität, but also for Freie Universität, this was inevitable downsizing with larger emphasis on teaching and on research. There was certainly a miracle that came out of that somehow these universities were downsized to a half, and on the other hand gained a lot of research strength and improvement at the same time. So this restructuring also had its positive effects. The worry that we always have is that politicians always, if they see a miracle, want it repeated, and that they think that if they would cut again, they could get improvements again. And that definitely is not an option. But the changes at Freie Universität and at Humboldt Universität were only a part of a whole transformation in the field of sciences and also the humanities, which took place in the whole city of Berlin, where today Berlin is one of Europe's outstanding metropolitan areas with a great and valuable diversity. And that's a diversity, if you want, of biographies of people, ethnicities, cultures, perspectives, but also a diversity of the research scenery. It's become a center of cultural and creative industries. It stands for freedom and for cosmopolitanism, values that academia also has to capture. So if I talk about diversity, then this Berlin has an amazing potential for a very diverse science landscape, which includes the 3 universities, also a 4th university, the University of the Arts, Charité, which is the largest European university hospital, joint of Freie and of Humboldt Universität. But then there's 7 public universities of applied sciences, private universities, research institutes, both public and federal and private. There's museums, scientific collections. It's a huge treasure. And in the moment we bring this treasure together in Berlin University Alliance. Also as a part of that, in Berlin, we have all the transfer into business, startup companies, but also the exchange between university and non-university stakeholders. From the beginning, Freie Universität was driven by this Veritas Justitia Libertas, sort of these values. And now we are in this joint enterprise I just mentioned, in the Excellence Initiative. This goes into the Berlin University Alliance. But I wanted to start really at 2007, where Freie Universität started to have this title of an excellence university. And from that time comes this concept of international network university that I already mentioned in the beginning. And at that point, I should hand over to Sabine again.
In the first round of Excellence Initiative, Humboldt University was successful with several clusters of excellence and graduate schools, which made an impact on the Berlin science landscape, but was not awarded as University of Excellence. In 2012, Humboldt University also joined the rank of German excellence universities with its long-term institutional strategy translating Humboldt into the 21st century. The introduction of the Excellence Initiative strongly facilitated the collaborative process, particularly from the second phase of the Excellence Initiative in 2012. The number of collaborative research projects between Freie, Humboldt und Technische Universität and Charité as well grew rapidly. The number of proposals and projects in collaboration with non-university research institutes in the Berlin area grew at the same time. Research collaboration between the Berlin universities has reached a new high point in recent years, especially the successful application in the German Excellence Strategy funding program in 2019 gave a new boost on this development. Freie, Humboldt, Technische Universität and Charité formed the Berlin University Alliance. They were selected as the only German alliance of excellence. The increasingly intensive forms of research collaboration among the partner institutions lay the groundwork for a new systematic form of institutional integration. The alliance is thus a logical consequence of a process lasting 3 decades. From institutional isolation, this process had led to first forms of cooperation and onward to a strong community consisting of the 3 universities and Charité, an alliance with new attention, which now attracts attention worldwide. In the excellence strategy, the alliance partners have been granted funding for 7 clusters of excellence. All clusters, without exception, combine principal investigators from at least 2 alliance partners, and many combine PIs from all 4 partners. For the new funding period started in 2019, Berlin has been awarded more clusters of excellence in the excellence strategy than any other city in Germany. The partners and their collaboration have turned Berlin into one of the most successful research locations in Germany. Also, the number of collaborative research centers in Berlin funded by the German Research Foundation is the highest nationwide. One of the Berlin University Alliance is the creation of an integrated research environment that will establish Berlin as a Europe leading science hub. The overall long-term strategy of the Alliance has 5 components: developing Berlin-wide joint research agenda, focusing on societal issues of global importance, fostering a Berlin-centered network of research and knowledge exchange, bundling Berlin expertise for assessing and developing general standards for research quality and research value, establishing a Berlin-wide integrated space for careers and recruitment, and last but not least, creating a Berlin-wide network of research services and infrastructures. 3 additional cross-cutting themes shape the joint agenda: supporting diversity and gender equality, promoting research-based teaching and learning, and advancing strategic internationalization.
So we started on this 1 year ago, 1st of November 2019, a year in which much has happened. On the one hand, I'm very proud. We just gave a press conference this morning describing how we built structures and which are now workable, including we needed Berlin laws to be passed for that. It's a process for which there's no blueprint to have 3 universities plus the medical hospital work together. And a lot of things passed and a lot of things happened in this. But it was not only building governance, but there was also getting joint research projects into going. This also included projects for the COVID pandemic, which of course was not planned and was not contained in the plans we had for the first year. We had projects for pandemic research, but also for collecting data during the pandemic. We started out, Sabine mentioned these joint Berlin-wide joint things, these what we call Grand Challenge initiatives, where we started to focusing on social cohesion as a joint topic, where we also put in a lot of money. The next topic will be global health, and this has already started in the pandemic. But then there's also the international things. Together with the University of Oxford, the Alliance established a Center for Advanced Studies to develop further the research partnership and to foster the collaboration on global health. Next big topic. A lot of strategic things have happened, but also international things like developing a strategy together with our partners at the National University in Singapore. Again, this is not only paper, but it's a call for joint research proposals. And in order to promote research and knowledge exchange, the Alliance started a call for experimental science communication laboratories, Experimentallabore, which is just running in the moment, and we are looking forward to the results. So to make it short, we worked very hard this last year to realize the potential of the Alliance itself, always with the goal in mind to get the full potential of Berlin's very diverse knowledge ecosystem onto the road, and to strengthen the institutional structures and on the same time, the complementary individual profiles of the partners. That's what we are up to, and I think we are making very good progress. Now, after giving so much details into what we do in Berlin, let us also take a brief look at our wider engagement into the further integration in Europe. Both our universities also founded together with their international partners 2 networks in the European Universities Initiative. Freie Universität co-founded the UNICA Europe Alliance together with Leuven, Edinburgh, Bologna, Madrid, Paris, Sorbonne, Krakow, and Helsinki. 3 of them are now also members of UNICA, namely Edinburgh, Helsinki, and Madrid Complutense.
And Humboldt Universität is co-founder of the Circle U alliance with Aarhus University, King's College London, Université de Paris, University of Belgrade, Leuven, and University of Oslo. Here also 3 of them are UNICA members: Oslo, Belgrade, King's College. Germany has been acting in a leading role in Europe since its foundation, and our 2 universities in Germany's capital want to contribute to this. For us, it is important to play a leading role in the ongoing development of the European Union and do our part in the further integration of the European research area in the European education area. And now we are pleased to hand over the floor to our dear colleague, Luciano Saso. But before we close, we want to thank all of those involved in organizing this meeting today. In times like ours, which are characterized by rapid change in almost any section of society, and thus also political turmoil, it seems even more important to look back. We can be proud of the achievements of the network and of European universities over the past 3 decades, and we have good reason to celebrate the 30th anniversary of UNICA. We should continue to reaffirm the important role of universities in society, and we wish us all an inspiring conference. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. And just to make sure and avoid misunderstandings, I meant that the 2 of you have together 20 minutes, which gives Professor Saso another 10 minutes for his presentation before we then kick off the discussion.
Okay,
so Professor Saso, you have the
thank you very much, Tanja, for chairing this session. I want to thank very much Sabine Kunst, President of Humboldt University, and Günter Ziegler, President of Freie Universität, for this excellent presentation, very nicely done together in a tandem. I think this is a very good example for cooperations in UNICA. And also thank you for this vision and this presentation of the different possible collaborations that can take place between universities. So your alliance in Berlin with very strong other universities, including Charité, which I know very well. I know quite well the M8 Alliance because my university is a member of that. And other possible cooperations, like UNICA and the European universities. And I think you are showing a good example of how, it is possible to, cooperate at different levels with different goals. And I think this is great, again, for the UNICA members. So without further ado, I will make my presentation here. I will share my screen. Okay. Okay, so I think you see my screen now. Okay. So I will try to be brief, even if the topic I try to tell you, something about UNICA in relationship with the history of European Union, and I will try to share some ideas that I've been thinking about for quite a long time. So let's go back to the Second World War. Of course, we have to say that we live in a continent that now is very peaceful, but it was not until 1945. We had so many wars, for centuries. And I think, again, this sometimes this is a concept that is neglected, especially by young people who give peace for granted. And I think it is the responsibility of universities also to remind our young students, about all these aspects, to make them, more also capable to appreciate what they have today, despite, of course, all the difficulties. We live always in a difficult period. This period of COVID is very, very difficult. But I mean, if we look back, I think Europe and other parts of the world went through even other crises, which are even more painful. And also, let's go back to the beginning of European Union. As you know, it started. Some people say nowadays, as an economic agreement. I think this is wrong. And I mean, on the online today, we have experts, much more expert than me, on this topic. But let me share this general idea that actually the idea behind European Community, which was the first, I would say, seed from which the European Union started later on, is peace, because the first agreement made in '51 was about coal and steel, the resources that at that time, were considered, of course, the drivers of the war machine. So the idea was to try to prevent another war in the continent, having, first of all, these resources to be shared. So it was a very practical approach, but very, very effective. And also, let's remember, I think, the migration issues disappeared recently from the news because of COVID, but the problem of migrants did not disappear. We have in the world 70 million people forcibly displaced. I know since this session is dedicated to Germany, in a way, we have to remember the generosity of Germany in 2015, when more than 1 million migrants were welcome at that time. And of course, there were also, I know, political issues also related to that after that. So these issues, again, disappeared from the news, but they were the basis of populism, rising in our countries. And we have to remember that, migration was really in the roots of the European community, because, for instance, countries like Italy contributed to these economic agreements, not having coal, not having steel, actually with people who actually decided to migrate from the south to the north, to Belgium, to Germany, and to other countries. So the economic community, as you know, was created in 1957 in the Treaty of Rome. Many young people in Italy completely forgot this, and I think, again, we should be proud of having created this community. If we look at the European Economic Community in 1958, it is amazing. This map looks very, very old. Of course, there are many countries now that members of UNICA, which did not exist at that time. And again, it was, I think, the vision of what now we call the fathers of European Union, to try to create, an agreement between countries which have been fighting, for centuries, and then finally they created a very peaceful community. I really love this picture, taken in 1984 with Mitterrand and Kohl. They're really showing that, peace again was possible in Europe, and we did not have the the necessity to fight again. Schengen also, again, in this period of COVID, it was really threatened. I traveled in the summer by car, and I noticed again very long queues, between the countries in which usually you can go through without any problem. Again, Schengen agreement is a great idea, and for many years we managed to benefit from this free exchange of people between countries of European Union and also associated countries. And again, the COVID crisis currently threatened this agreement and this approach in Europe. The fall of the Berlin Wall, of course, again, is at the core, I think, of this session. It was a very important moment for Europe in general. It opened to the unification of Germany, and then to a dramatic change, political, social, economical, and also in terms of education. And actually, if we look again at the map of European Economic Community in 1990, we see a complete, different picture from today. And then, it is a pleasure to see finally the former East Germany to join as a unified country, the community. And look at what happened in 1990, the creation of UNICA. Again, some fathers of UNICA at that time thought, since the landscape of higher education changed so much, to create a network of universities to cooperate. And if we look at the original mission and vision of UNICA, indeed it is there, this cooperation with universities in Eastern Europe, which for many years were in an area, and the collaborations were more difficult at that time. And finally, after the fall of the Berlin Wall, it was possible again to have a strong cooperation and exchanges of people, of students, etc. And again, I will not go through the whole list of universities because I think would be boring for all of you, but the slides will be finally available. But we have to, let's remember, first of all, the Université Libre de Bruxelles, because the ULB, it is the alma mater of UNICA. It was actually the rector at that time of ULB who started UNICA, and then together with other universities, as you can see on the map, from different countries, I think created a strong network which is still alive and I think working very well as we discussed this morning. Let me also share this slide that I shared already this morning, because on the right there is an interesting picture of, let's say, the fathers of UNICA, the creators. And as I already said this morning, it is a little bit sad to see that at that time no women were present. So UNICA was created only by men, unfortunately. But now the situation is much different, and so we are very happy to see many female rectors and presidents in the UNICA universities. And as I already announced this morning, we're also very happy at Sapienza University, my university, to have a female rector. She was elected a few days ago. So after 700 years, also Sapienza as a woman, as a leader. So unfortunately, we have to remember when we say no war in Europe anymore, actually this is not true, because we had a terrible war in Yugoslavia, started in 1991. So when some of the countries actually were found peace, unfortunately, another important part of Europe suffered so much for many years. And 1992, another important milestone, the Maastricht Treaty, creating finally the European Union. I will go quickly, just, I want to share just some ideas, and I don't have the time to go deeper, but, of course, during the discussion shared by Tanja, we can discuss more about some of these aspects. European Union in 95, welcome to other countries such as Sweden, Finland, and Austria. And UNICA in 95 became stronger. So other countries, other universities joined, as you can see on the map. And so we steadily, grew quite well. The euro, sometimes also euro is controversial, has been also at the base of some criticism, which, alimented the populism in some of the countries. But I think the majority of the people, really appreciate the euro, what allowed to, us in the last few years to freely, exchange, a common currency between our countries. European Union in 2004, many countries, 10 countries to be precise, joined the European Union. And again, the European Union became stronger after 2004. And UNICA in 2004. You see another, we have between 1996 and 2004, many universities from different countries joined. And you see already on the map, as you notice, is the map of the Council of Europe. So according to the UNICA statute, a UNICA member should be located in the capital of a country belonging to the Council of Europe. So we're not talking about European Union only, but we are very proud to have several countries belonging to other European countries. And you see, we are almost now covering, the whole map, but still there are some important capitals not represented in 2004. 2007, welcome to Romania and Bulgaria in the European Union. And 2012, this is something also a little bit neglected, I think, in Europe. We have to again remind our students, our young people, that the EU received the Nobel Prize for Peace. And it is, based on this very short presentation, I think it was very well deserved by the European Union, because we guaranteed within the European Union. As I said, not in Europe in general, unfortunately, but in the European Union, we did not have any war, since the creation of the European Community. And this, I think, is by itself is a great result, in addition to many, many others. European Union in 2013 welcome to Croatia. And UNICA in 2013, you see, is already looking very similar to the situation today. We covered other, other countries joined, other important universities in capital cities joined. And very shortly, unfortunately, yeah, we have to mention another war in Europe. Again, another very sad moment. And UNICA in 2019 with other members joining. Again, let me mention here that in 2018, the Igor Sikorsky Kiev Polytechnic Institute joined. It's a very important university in Ukraine. And again, that was, I think, it was also a very important sign for UNICA to be very open and to have universities from different countries to join. We have we always say we have universities from Lisbon to Moscow, from Reykjavik to Cyprus. So we really cover a wide span of universities. And in 2019, another Russian university also joined, the people-friendly universities of Russia, together with the other UNICA members, as you know, Lomonosov and the National Research University High School of Economics are also members. So in 2020, actually, today we accepted other two important universities which became members of UNICA today, University of Sarajevo and the Bucharest University of Economic Studies. So actually today a country which was not represented in UNICA, Bosnia and Herzegovina, now is represented in UNICA. And 2020, unfortunately, it is a sad year for many aspects. Brexit finally, is happened. We really thought for a long time that could have been reversed this decision, but finally that was not the case. Still, as you know, the situation is not clear. The full agreement between the UK and the EU was not still obtained. We hope, and UNICA supported very much the British universities in trying to reach a good agreement with the European Union, because we really want to continue to cooperate with the British universities under the Erasmus program, under the Horizon 2020, which now will become Horizon Europe. So research, also European universities. I mean, the two presidents of Berlin mentioned, of course, the alliances, and it's very important to have British universities in these, alliances. But the requisite in that case is the participation in the Erasmus program. Without that full agreement, it will be difficult for others. Some British universities are already members, but for others, if the agreement will not be reached, it will be impossible to, to access this important, scheme of a European Union. And there are some other countries like Switzerland, for instance, also with this difficulties. So the year 2020, of course, is the year of the pandemic. Again, very tragic for many people, and etc. So we discussed this this morning. And on the other hand, I have to say the reaction of the European Union, again, with the resources available, because some people sometimes forget that the resources of the European Union are not very high, because actually the member states do not give to the European Union much. I mean, just a very small percentage of the GDP of each country. But I think with the resources available, all the actions of European Union were quite strong and quite effective. And again, the German presidency, I think, played a very important role in this case, related to many different issues. So we should be proud and happy to be, in the European Union, and having this kind of possibility to be protected also by our collaboration. UNICA, as we said this morning, reacted quite well, quite strongly to the crisis. We organized many activities online, and so I'm very proud, to be president of this organization, which now has 55 universities in 38 capital cities, Many activities are there for rectors, like the meeting today, for vice rectors, for heads of the international offices, and working groups. So in this difficult year, 2020, we organized 21 webinars with almost 1,000 people online, with an evaluation, final evaluation very high, almost 5. So it was really difficult year, but I think very, very good for the UNICA activities. So I have to conclude saying that, really we should be proud to be together, to be stronger together. And I thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Luciano, and also perfect timing. I promise I won't be too long so that we have enough time for a discussion. What I would like to do is, as I said, try to stimulate the discussion by focusing on one of the grand challenges that's just an impression that should receive a little bit more attention, also by UNICA. I think that the presentations nicely carved out how much the separation and unification of Berlin and Germany has been entangled with the history of Europe. Universities have played an important role in the coming together of Europe and helped making the increasing, what we say, diversity in unity work. They do so by fostering cooperation and exchange across national borders. And there's many levels across which the European Union has actually supported this kind of cooperation exchange, Erasmus being only one example. And by addressing common societal challenges that do not stop at national borders and can only be tackled at the global, transnational level, I think, again, this nicely shows the relevance of science in general and universe in particular. You will discuss some of these challenges in the subsequent sessions. And as I said, what I would like to draw your attention to is a challenge which lies at the heart of UNICA, at least I think, and is closely entangled with the history of Europe, with the history of UNICA, and certainly with the history of Humboldt and Freie, namely freedom of scientific research. Freie Universität, as Günter Ziegler pointed out, was founded to protect freedom of scientific research against political and ideological pressure, which Humboldt University, as Professor Kunst explained, experienced during the national and real existing socialism. After the end of the Cold War, and with German unification, the two universities managed to safeguard, I would say, freedom of scientific research against the challenges of massive financial cuts. It was a very painful time, not only for Freie Universität, but also for Humboldt Universität to engage in these transformations that came with unification. Building networks within Berlin, within Germany and beyond Germany, with the rest of the world, was a major part in this process. And the Berlin University Alliance, to me at least, exemplifies how the Berlin universities have made unity in diversity work in Berlin, but also and beyond, addressing grand societal challenges we are currently facing. These societal challenges, as Professor Saso mentioned, include pandemics, climate change, social cohesion, but also freedom of scientific research. Freedom of scientific research is increasingly under pressure, not only in authoritarian countries outside Europe, but in Europe itself. The elimination of gender studies in some curricula and government control over research funding are just two prominent examples. There seems to be a script for limiting and violating freedom of scientific research, which is enacted around the world, including countries that are members of UNICA. Europe is built, and again, Professor Saso's presentation was very clear on this, is built on freedom, equality, democracy, and the rule of law. Freedom of scientific research is an integral part of these liberal values. It is linked to freedom of expression, freedom of assembly, and freedom of movement. Freedom of scientific research stands for openness, exchange, excellence, diversity, which is at the heart of UNICA and a precondition, I would argue, for its functioning as a facilitator of collaboration and exchange among universities in Europe. A month ago, the Ministerial Conference on the European Research Area adopted the Bonn Declaration on Freedom of Scientific Research to reaffirm the commitment of the European Union and its member states to freedom of scientific research. This is a clear indication that the EU member states are aware of the challenges to and violations of freedom of scientific growth that are happening in Europe and the European EU member states. It remains to be seen how they intend to respond to these contestations, but I would like to invite you as rectors of leading European universities on the role UNICA can and should play in defending freedom of scientific research and to protect the institutional autonomy of universities and also ensure long-term reliable and stable financing for our activities. So I hope that gets us going. I would love to see a lively debate on UNICA and its roles in tackling these challenges all three of our presenters have referred to. And I open the floor for comments from the audience. Please use the raise hand function, which is the blue hand at the very bottom of the participant list. And we have 57 participants, so I will scroll up and down to make sure that I do not overlook any one of you. Okay. I hope you still, it's only because you're still trying to figure out how to use the raise hand function. You can also try to wave. I see at least some of you in front of me, if that makes it easier. Okay, then I'll use a technique I use in my seminar. So what I will do is I will simply ask the three panelists, maybe you have comments on each other's statements, or whether you want to say something about freedom of scientific research, just to get us going here. Okay, das ist Günter. Go ahead. And don't forget to unmute yourself.
Perhaps, yes, done. And one of the things of freedom of expression and so on is to make sure to have a chance to get unmuted, right? But I mean, in these presentations, there's been made sort of a parallel between development of universities and all these aspects that we have on the one hand of collaboration and of separation. And then the attack of scientific freedoms in various things, and the very parallel development, if you want to see it parallel, on national arenas and sort of between states in Europe, where we have unification, where we have European Union, but where we also have a division of systems, and where we also see these various attacks on, if you want, the political system, but also where society, in some sense, always has the danger to fall apart. And I mean, my interpretation would be that in one hand, the universities are just small societies, of course, and have to be seen as communities, and perhaps thus have the same potential, the same rivalry between them, and the same dangers of division. But on the other hand, in some sense, they always have to be earlier in also finding responses to exactly these problems. And I wonder where we stand on this, or whether we still want to interpret it the way that this is sort of national debates and politics and across Europe, which then breaks down and also trickles down to the universities. I think that shouldn't be our role. And if I look at my university, it also hasn't been the role where, I mean, the late 60s student protests, I mean, started out also from students and activists at Freie Universität.
Thank you, Günter. I think You know, you're absolutely right that these grand challenges are linked and have a combined effect on the university. So again, I don't see any hands at the moment. So let me ask you, Luciano, a question. I think one example which nicely exemplifies how these different challenges come together and have a huge effect on universities is Brexit, right? And so I wonder, how has UNICA responded and dealt with the challenge of Brexit, which is also a challenge in terms of it's the first time that the country is actually leaving the European Union. It's the most likely case, arguably, but still, a country has decided to leave the European Union. And so I wonder whether how UNICA has dealt with this, has responded to this challenge.
Yeah. No, thank you very much, Tanja. This is a very important question. I mean, before COVID, as I said, we debated the Brexit issue on several occasions.
Sorry, Luciano, to interrupt, but the audio is not very clear. Maybe. Okay. Okay, now it's better.
Okay, I don't know. I was saying that Brexit was a topic very often debated before COVID, in UNICA meetings, because of course it was so important. And we tried our best from the point of view of UNICA. Of course, it was very sad to see Brexit happening since the beginning. I mean, I really thought that famous referendum in 2016 did not yield the result that finally was obtained, even if I think it was then forgotten again by many people that the result was roughly 50-50 also. I mean, scientifically speaking, I always say that it was not statistically significant probably, but still, of course, it was the result of an official referendum in a country. So it was something that European Union, of course, accepted. And it was very sad to see that finally, Brexit finally happened in 2020. In terms of UNICA membership, of course, that did not change anything because, as I said in my presentation, always UNICA had the vision to have members that, when it was created, European Union did not exist yet, but we had members at that time not part of, not in countries belonging to European community. So in terms of UNICA activities, we have two important UNICA members in the UK, King's College London and the University of Edinburgh. So nothing, of course, changed. But overall, of course, as I said, Brexit, if the agreement will not be reached in a good way, will affect the cooperation of British universities with other European universities. And of course, I hope that we will go towards the Norwegian model, as we may say. I mean, the cooperation with Norway, for instance, is excellent on all points of view between the European Union and this country, which is not part of the European Union. So hopefully, the idea would be to go in that direction, because now we have a new, of course, Horizon Europe program 2021-2027. We will have the new Erasmus program 2021-2027. As I said, we have these European universities. And after these two pilot calls, as you know, the European Commission already funded 17 European alliances in the first call and 24 in the second call. So a large number of universities in Europe are already members of, this very important initiative, including, of course, several British universities. But again, without a good agreement, that would be a problem in the future. So I'm really, I try to be optimistic and see if we can again reach a good agreement. But again, for UNICA, nothing will change anyway, because our colleagues from King's College London and Edinburgh will be always strong members of UNICA.
Finally, I see two hands. I'm delighted. I don't know in which order they came up, but since one of the two hands is from Freie Universität, I would give the floor first to Lenka Rovna and then Verena Blechinger-Talcott, who's second on my list. And please feel free to raise your hands. Thank you. So Lenka Rovna, I'm sorry, I don't know which institution you're from, so maybe you can briefly say at which university you are based. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I had my institution's affiliation in the morning, and I forgot to fill it now. So I am the Vice Rector for European Affairs from Charles University in Prague. And I would like to bring up one matter regarding what was debated before. And this is also cooperation between UNICA and other networks which already work in Europe. Luciano showed us the map of the member universities, but for instance, Charles University is also member, besides EUA, as I think we all are, of Coimbra Group, Europeum, and we are member of LERU CE7. And what I think is also important, that these networks are cooperating and pooling forces. Tanja was asking about Brexit, and I remember that it was in 2018 when Charles University was celebrating 100 years of the foundation of Czechoslovakia, and all these networks were present in Prague, and we launched Prague Appeal, and it was dealing with an access and free access to research to all European researchers, including our British colleagues. And so I think that this is also important. You remember, Luciano, that there were more appeals, more cooperation vis-à-vis European Commission, European Parliament, member states, and the question, for instance, of freedom of research education, that is one of them. And we are getting ready for next year when hopefully again the associations are going to meet in June, so that we have to think how we are going to pool forces again. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I cannot help but comment that, you know, in political science, we talk a lot about overlapping membership. You know, that states are very often members to different organizations that actually very often fulfill a similar function. And whether that is a good thing or a bad thing, I tend to believe it is actually, in your case, at least a positive thing, but it allows you to pool resources across various networks. And if you wanted to channel certain issue, bring it into the public discourse and also into the political discourse. Okay, Verena, you're next.
Yeah, thank you very much, both for the two great presentations, and then also Tanja for her stimulating input. So what we've seen in the two presentations was that basically the history of the European Union and the history of UNICA as an association are very closely linked, no? And that also the spirit of UNICA is shaped by the values that the European Union is also promoting. And I think the presentation by Günter Ziegler and Sabine Kunst has shown very, very clearly that especially I'm Vice President for International Affairs at the Freie Universität Berlin, that our Berlin history is very strongly shaped by both the negative, the dark sides of European history, but also by the very positive sides that we have now. We are stronger together, and we play an important role. And so I wonder, Tanja raised these important issues of democracy, challenges to democracy, academic freedom. We talked about Brexit. And so I just wonder, and I think Lenka also asked in a similar direction, what can we do as association, especially of universities that are located in European capitals? Yeah, what can we do to contribute to the preservation and maybe also the strengthening of a European spirit? Now, should we engage in building more programs in European studies? Should we engage in having joint lecture series that promote European ideals? Should we engage in promoting a European degree as a new way of structuring activities of universities? So I'm just wondering what ideas there are, because I think UNICA has quite a lot of potential, especially because it's the capital power of so many European states. And I wonder whether we could talk a little bit about that to answer to the challenges that Tanja so aptly put in front of us. Thank you.
Thank you, Verena. Listening to your, I just was reminded that I'm working on the European neighborhood policy and the Eastern Partnership. And there is one dimension in that European neighborhood policy which deals with very diverse countries, both in terms of socioeconomic development, but also regime type, right? So you have countries like Azerbaijan, for instance. And there is one element in there that is exactly focusing on the role of science in general and universities in particular. It might be worth the while to explore. I mean, there's some research there to what extent these kind of levels of cooperation can actually contribute to supporting, shall we say, democratic reforms, right? Supporting, protecting, and promoting democratic reforms, and that could include the freedom of scientific research, of course. So I'd be very interested to hear what kind of experience you've made, and maybe particularly from those countries that struggle. I mean, it's not that in Germany we don't face this problem. You know, we had the Alternative for Germany threatening to walk in a seminar focusing on climate change or on gender equality. I mean, these are also infringements of freedom of scientific research, right? But they are, of course, on a different level compared to what is going on in some of the other countries. So maybe you can tell us what role UNICA and the cooperation exchange facilitated by UNICA can, and how it can actually help you in safeguarding freedom of scientific research. So I go up and down again and see there is Günter. Günter, is this? I was anyway suggesting to give back the floor to you three. So Günter, if you want to start, and then maybe Sabine, Kunst, you would like to come in at some point, and of course Luciano.
I mean, if I just watch this picture of the individual universities and the university network UNICA, and on the other hand the European Union, then I see that the levels at which one could and one should be active are so many that really the question is what to do first, or whether to do all things in parallel. I mean, on a very high level, I mean, one thing I have to watch is that there's really threatened universities around. And I mean, Central European University is one that's not part of UNICA as far as I can see. That's the only university I can come up with in the moment, which was just forced to move from one capital of Europe to another. This might give particular expertise for UNICA. But then there's, if you look at the greatest British research universities, which are in the moment under immense threat, I don't know what King's College says, also financially and in all things by this combination of COVID and Brexit and an incompetent government, which also won't support them. So the challenges are huge. But I think we should also keep or have a focus on just the very technical levels, where we say, look at the current fights for open access and open data and open science, which, I mean, I'm involved in the deal negotiations in Germany where we talk to the major publishers to get open access contracts, and where in some sense sort of the ownership of our own research is under threat. And again, this is it was a huge achievement that we are doing these negotiations on a national level in Germany, and not every university library alone. But there the international coordination is also very important in order to make sure that these publishing corporations which are very rich and very powerful, work for us and not the other way around. That seems to be the basic question at that level. And so if I can just put this extra bullet point on the agenda also for European universities and UNICA, I'm happy.
Thank you very much, Günter. I just want to highlight one aspect you mentioned, that, you know, freedom of scientific research is not only challenged by governments or politics or trying to, you know, limit the institutional autonomy of universities. It's also the spending, you know, I mean, as I said, a long-term, reliable and sustainable spending. And maybe that is a chance to ask Sabine Kunst to come in, because what I've heard that thanks to the pandemic and the huge financial efforts made in terms of economic recovery might as well mean a major budget crunch again for public universities in Germany and in Berlin. So I wonder whether you have any thoughts on that or on anything else we've been discussing.
So I don't know whether I can really forecast how the financial situation is going to develop. So I think we will face, yes, problems, especially in the field of the financial resources of universities. And one of perhaps a topic which UNICA should focus on is where is the common ground between the universities under the umbrella of UNICA. And the situation of especially our student groups are different to other situations of universities which are not that big, and where are the city conditions are not in that way isolated, then students face really serious problems with their interaction under pandemic conditions. And to foster especially the student interaction and mobility could be one way which we could focus on. And I have to apologize because I have now joined another meeting, of course also via Zoom. Apologizing for that.
Thank you, Sabine. It was great that you could be with us in this session. Luciano, you wanna come in at this point?
I heard many interesting things, so I have many comments. I don't want to take much time. I mean, if other participants would like to intervene, but I will say just a few words. It was interesting what Lenka said. Of course, the cooperation with other networks for UNICA are so important. So we organized, of course, joint events, and the Charles University was very active, at least on 2 major occasions, including the celebration of the Emperor Charles. I still remember that event was really high level, organized in Prague, you know, putting together UNICA with Coimbra and Europeum. So that was a very good example. Also in Edinburgh in 2019, we organized a research meeting in cooperation with Coimbra. So Coimbra Group and UNICA cooperated several times. Of course, with the EUA, the European University Association, we do often different events and activities or publications, etc. So, now we discussed this morning. Of course, it is in the UNICA strategy to play an umbrella role as an umbrella organization for the European universities, because, as I said this morning, UNICA at the moment has actually today 55 universities, 36 of them already are members of alliances. So we have a high number of alliances represented. And on the 30th of November, we will have a panel. We already invited several rectors and presidents to participate in this panel on the 30th of November to share the ideas and experiences in the last 2 years. So this again, a cooperation with a different organization, I think, is very useful. And I agree with Tanja. I mean, at least for higher education, it is good to be members of different networks, because you learn from different tables, and you bring ideas to the other. So for me, I mean, my university, Sapienza, is a member of different organizations, and I learn a lot from all of them. So this is was one point. Another point is related to open access and open science. These are topics very close to the heart of UNICA. We organize on that different activities. We have a working group called Scholarly Communication devoted to that. We have actually an upcoming event this month on that because really open access and open science are key, especially I think after the COVID crisis, we learned and we actually realized that it's so important to have available resources for everyone in the society. And again, this is part of the socio-economic divide. I mean, if some journals or some materials are only available through some publishers, there are so many people in the society completely left out that will not have access to important information. So this, I think, and I know Germany is very active on that together with other countries. And in UNICA, again, we debate this very often, so we can come up with it. Then another element I want to mention is related to virtual mobility, because of course, COVID crisis made the physical mobility very difficult, but created opportunities for high quality virtual mobility. And this is debated very much, not only in UNICA, but also in university alliances, today. And University of Bucharest is now organizing the next EduLab meeting in December, in which virtual mobility will be a key topic. So I think we have to reason very carefully on that, because it is different from the physical mobility. The motivation of students is not only, of course, in that case, you will not go to another country, you will not go to another city, you will be exposed to lectures online. So I have to say we have to improve the transparencies, let's say, of our education offer, research offer, to make sure that the students online can first of all see what we offer, and then they will be able to choose better. And I think the interaction through virtual mobility will be key in the next few years. I think even after COVID, we will go back to probably a hybrid model, and physical mobility will probably change. And finally, concerning also what Verena mentioned, this is also very important. We have, many activities in UNICA also related to UNICA in the city. To what universities can do for our cities, for our countries. I think we do a lot, but we could probably do even more because there are some, again, issues now completely neglected because of COVID. But again, the problems are still there. Populism is still there. I think UNICA was trying to do something against that, trying to play a role to prevent these phenomena, which in the end, they have a strong impact on our, politicians, etc. And I think that we should do more in the future.
Thank you very much also for reminding us how important these networks are to exchange best practice. I think this is really one of the key issues, also now with dealing with the consequences of the pandemic, right? That digitalization is a huge topic. I mean, it affects teaching, it affects research, and it's not necessarily always bad. I mean, I think we need to carefully reflect the positive and the negative consequences of going digital. And Verena already talked about what we can do in terms of teaching. Also at the digital level, I think that opens entirely new possibilities for co-teaching, where you don't have to necessarily travel to another country, but actually, can sit. We have had conferences and also seminars across 3 continents, which also sometimes means you have to get up in the middle of the night. But hey, it also facilitates, right, and opens new opportunities. And I think that is something we should keep in mind. And I would be very curious. There's so many things, so many interesting things to address. But in terms of exchanging best practice, how you actually deal with student mobility, but also with research. We have enormous research funds which we cannot spend because we cannot go to these countries, which is particularly problematic when you have these EU grants that explicitly designed to bring together, how shall I put it, networks that usually or not necessarily connect, right? I have a Horizon 2020 project with Belarus, with Ukraine, with Georgia, with the Palestine Authority, with Egypt and another country, Tunisia. I mean, this is, for them, this is a completely different ballgame here. But for them, these research networks are extremely important, and we have to be careful that we can actually maintain these relationships we built under the conditions, the pandemic and the post-pandemic conditions. So that is maybe something you may want to reflect. You've already discussed about COVID, but I think there are a lot of dimensions that are relevant here. And one of these networks, what I really like about them is, as I said, they bring together institutions, but also people beyond the sort of established networks. And I was just happy to find out that here's some people who've met a long time ago, and this is an opportunity to reconnect. So let me just check whether there are any hands. So far, I don't see.
I think it's also a little bit late, Tanja.
Yes,
sorry.
I was just to suggest, I think nobody will be sad to have a little bit longer coffee break. I mean, that is one of the things when you spend the whole day in front of a screen.
You know, I always joke that as Italian, I try to be very careful about the time because I don't like so much the stereotype.
In case there are no other raised hands, so we are.
So.
Okay, you know what? Let's just make a cut here. Let me thank you very much for the fantastic insights, for the opportunity to get to know you all. And I wish you a very stimulating discussion for the rest of the day. And I quickly hand over to Luciano and say goodbye. It was
perfect. Thank you very much, Tanja, for sharing so well. This session was very interesting. Thank you very much to President Ziegler and President Kunst for giving such an interesting presentation. So now we have a 10 minutes break, and so we come back at 2:30, actually slightly less than 10 minutes. At 2:30, we start the next session. Thank you.